This is Transistor.fm.
All right, happy Thursday, product people. It's Justin Jackson here. Welcome to the show. I told you I'd be back every Thursday, didn't I? Publishing this one a little bit late on Thursday, but that's okay. That's okay. How am I doing? I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing? You feeling okay? Hope you're finding some time to work on your own projects and get stuff done. By the way, if you're working on something cool, I'd love to hear about it. Get me on Twitter at MIJustin. A lot of people interested in my new project, productpeople.club. Go there, sign up for the waiting list. I think I'm going to post a screenshot today of kind of what's in the pipes for productpeople.club. What else? Going to Edmonton soon. Going to make the drive down with the fam, or should I say up? It's north from where I am. Big 12-hour drive, 6 people in a minivan. It is going to be a good time. Here's the stats from last year's trip. Let's see. We had 3 kids throw up, 2 bleeding noses, and 1 speeding ticket. So I'm hoping I can beat those stats this year. We'll see. I'll let you guys know how it works out. Once again, Stryker, one of my favorite bands providing music for the show. This is Fight for Your Life. Let's go talk with Brennan Dunn. Great guy to talk to, especially if you're looking at how to market your product, how to build something people actually want. All right, let's go. Let's get into the show.
Fight for your life. Fight for your freedom. Or you'll never live again. Fight for your life. Fight for your freedom. Or you'll never see tomorrow. No.
Justin Jackson here, and I'm live with Brennan Dunn. Brennan runs Planscope at planscope.io and doubleyourfreelancingrate.com. He's essentially living the dream, aren't you, Brennan?
Depends on the day, but yeah, I'm trying to. I've got, it's definitely getting better. Been a few bumps in the road regarding personal stuff, family stuff, but otherwise, the amazing part has been that I literally took 6 weeks off, and business still sold stuff, which is great. So.
Yeah. Well, let's start with that, actually. I think, who was I just talking to you about this? I was talking to Garrett Diamond about this. I was saying, what are the biggest misconceptions people have when it comes to your world and what it's really like running your business? He said running a SaaS business is way harder than people think. It's a lot more work. It's a lot more customer support. And but he also said, he's had some hard health issues this year too. And he said things basically kept running while he was going. It dipped a little bit, but that was the advantage, is that he had this stuff on the other side. But he definitely says it's a lot harder to run a product business than people might think.
Well, it depends. I've got my books, right? Double Your Freelancing Rate has been out 2 years. I literally put 0 effort each month into that, and it still does $2,000 a month. So that's kind of the ideal. I mean, people say there's no such thing as passive income. That's true to a degree. However, if you have enough stuff and enough glue between it all, right? I've got my newsletter, my blog, and all that. They'll eventually tie into my different products. It is kind of passive in that respect, but yeah, with a with a blog, or not a blog, with a SaaS, I think the issue is it just takes time to actually make a dent in your finances. Like it takes so long for a typical SaaS to get to the point where it can actually like be meaningful in your income. So that's actually what led me to doing a lot of these products, these other products, is that I did what I think a lot of, especially consultants do, and that's like, okay, I'm switching off consulting. I'm not going to have clients anymore. I'm going to do products. And then you realize, like, well, I still need to pay the bills, and you know, I'm making like, okay, $400 a month or something, great, but you know, I need to add a 0 or 2 or something, you know, to that. And so I mean, it's so I use products as a way to kind of create additional revenue channels. But what's been cool is that all this stuff I've built has reinforced like PlanScope and the other stuff. So it's been a cool journey. It's been really cool just being able to, like, consultants are my thing. Like that's my audience, I guess, freelancers and consultants.
Yeah.
And like all of my products touch on a different part of consulting, and there's really good overlap. So I'm happy that I kind of made that decision. That's something I would recommend to like anyone starting out. Like don't pull a Patrick McKenzie and sell to like teachers and plumbers and SaaS operators. Like, it's too hard to sell, you know.
Yeah. And this has been a recurring theme, and so I'm going to ask you this as well. First of all, who should you start with? And maybe we can help relieve some of the anxiety that people have around who they should, you know, they should focus on. And then second, what kind of product should you build your first time around? Should you build a full-time SaaS, or what should you do? So let's start with audience first. What kind of people should you focus on?
Ideally, I think you should focus on people that you know a lot about. Like, don't say I'm going to build a lawyer, like law firm management app when you know nothing about law stuff. I think it's easier to find, whether it's domains that you've had experience in, like if you've worked in, like let's say you've had a lot of clients, or you worked in a job that involved like case in point. So one of my earliest jobs is I worked as a designer / developer for a company that did like lead generation for like mortgage brokers and real estate agents. So I learned a lot about like leads and lead gen and all that kind of stuff doing that. So like when I left that, I started my little first startup, which we generated mortgage leads and we sold them. And you know, I got that experience from having worked in that industry. So I think it's a lot. You're definitely going to have a heads up if you know the industry, you know it well, and you're a member of the audience. Ideally, I mean, I wasn't a member of a mortgage broker audience per se, but I knew enough about what they needed, and you know, just from that exposure. So I definitely think like stay close, stick to, you know, in my case, I'm selling to consultants, but I am and was a consultant for many, many years. So it's been easier for me because I'm able to produce content that they like, because it's, you know, I have the credentials to talk on certain subjects.
Yeah.
But on top of that, I know firsthand kind of like the pains that they have. So that's been helpful too.
Well, and there's a little bit of a range here, right? Like on one side we could say, you know, there's some people that say like stay as close to the metal as you can. So if you are a consultant, sell to consultants. Yeah. And then the next step is maybe you've been a consultant, but you've been selling to, I'm trying to think of a good example that's not too crazy. You've been selling to insurance salesmen your whole life, so you know a lot about that industry. So would you say that it's okay to be in this group right here?
Yeah, I would. The only issue I think is usually it's easier to sell to people who know how to, like, I would struggle selling to insurance salesmen because I don't really know how to acquire them or where they loiter, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So that could involve higher touch offline sales, which is probably what would need to happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's totally doable if you're okay with that. The thing I like about what I'm doing now is I know, like, I have a lot of these predictable acquisition channels that I can tap into that don't require me to go and, like, hang out at insurance conferences or anything, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so I think, but I wouldn't write it off. Like, a really good example of this is like Matt Wensing, who runs Risk Pulse, which was Storm Pulse. It like, I mean, it's a really cool product, but he's selling to like people who run like FedEx and like asset management companies, right? So he knew enough about like asset tracking and weather stuff because that was his hobby, like the weather aspects and risk. But he's able, but you know, ask him. I mean, he's got salespeople, right, who work for him because to get a client like that or a customer like that, you need to do, you know, the kind of like the higher touch avenue. So it just depends on what you want to do. I think it depends on how high touch, how offline you might want to get. Like if you want to say like you know, dentists have the crappy software. I'm going to build new dental software. Dentists are not typically Googling around for like dental software, right? Like to get in there, you're going to need to like knock on their door, do a presentation, and you know, all that kind of stuff. So like that's one of the misconceptions I see is a lot of developers were like I can't believe my auto mechanic uses this crappy like, you know, 1980 style terminal thing to like do stuff, right? Like I could build something in a weekend in Rails that would be so much better, but then we don't realize that like it's not that easy. Like it's not about the product; it's about getting it in their hands. And if you don't know how to get it in their hands, it's going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah, you need a path to market. I think that's the one thing, because I get a lot of emails from people saying, well, what about this idea? Like, what about this market? And you've kind of identified, I think, 3 things. One is, how well do you know it? Like, can you speak with authority about the subject? 2, do you even like these people? Because you're literally going to be helping these people forever. You know, and I think about Alan Branch quite a bit with this, with Less Accounting. So, like, a big part of his day is he has to hang out with accountants. And obviously he's okay with that. He's made that choice. But you have to think, like, he hangs out with accountants a lot. Like, he's going to conferences.
Like, he goes to accountant conferences, like, for CPAs and stuff.
Yeah, so you have to think, like, you have to be able to visualize yourself hanging out with these people. And, you know, if it's actually funny that, you know, like, real estate agents and, like, people always want to build products for real estate agents and other things. But you have to, like, imagine, like, do you want to go to real estate agent conferences and hang out all day? So that was number 2. And then the third thing you said is, how easy is it to reach them?
Right.
And I think that's a big thing. You know, I work in my day job, I work in kind of enterprise communications, and our biggest challenge is finding out where those people hang out. Like, where can you find them? They're not, there's no, like, identifiable group of them online.
Right, and that's the issue. Like, I can find freelancers more or less pretty easily online because they tend to Google for, like, how do I raise my rate, or how do I get clients, like, they're web workers, right? So they use the web to do stuff. You know, it's a little harder for certain audiences.
Yeah, and the other thing we didn't mention, but you mentioned in the last interview you and I did, and I want to say this again. This is one of my favorite quotes. You said, "Listen to what people who have a financial interest are complaining about." What did you mean by that when you said that?
Yeah, I mean, so you wanna find pre-existing cash flow, I think. So you want to find like you want to tap into like things that are actually affecting somebody's bottom line, right? So you know, like one of the misconceptions, like to go back to my dental software example, like does the dentist really think they're losing money by having crappy software, right? Like do they know that? You know, maybe you think you're coming from like a UX perspective, but you know, they're like, well, it's like habit. I just hit the right stroke, you know, whatever of keys in a row, and it does what I need. So, like, I mean, you really need to tap into core needs that aren't being fulfilled with whatever current workflows exist. So, like a great example would be you have an office of insurance salespeople, and they're emailing spreadsheets back and forth to each other all day, right? Like that is they're losing money because they're wasting time on, and there's a hourly rate, I guess, for like, you know, their time. And so if you can tap into that, well, you know, these workflows are costing you money, and here's why I think you should look at what we're doing. Or the better alternative, which is always, I can make you more money, and you show them how, like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could automatically qualify your inbound leads through by conditioning them over time through like email courses or drip campaigns or something, which is something like most SMBs know nothing about. And you know, you come in, that you're not like you come in and say, hey, I've got this little thing that you know, you're a I mean, case in point, like to go back to Patrick, he's got his thing that reminds patients of like clinics and massage parlors or whatever to come in. That's a way so the paying company, the people who are paying for his software, make more money, and he focuses on that, not focuses on like, hey, we'll text people for you, right? Like that's not the focus. That's the feature, but it's not the benefit. So, you know, identify where are people hemorrhaging money and where are people losing out on potential opportunities, and sell that. Don't sell the product. Yeah,
and you know, that just made me think of a lot of times I think developers, what they've asked me, you know, like they're basically saying like, how do I figure out what people need? And I think it's partly because they think of the world a little bit differently. As creative people, sometimes we're thinking of the world as like, oh, I could improve this user experience, or I could improve this back end, or I could improve the way this looks, I could improve the way this functions, or I could gather all this data. Like there's all these kind of interesting things to us that are like, man, I just like want to do that because it's interesting. But where one of the easiest ways to find out how to build a business is to look around your office and just think, how could I make them more money? Like that question alone is super, super helpful.
Well, that's a way to sell anything too. Like who wouldn't pay $1 to get 2 back, right?
Yeah.
Like that's, why wouldn't you? So if you can figure that out and tap into that vein, that's how you sell.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still in a B2B context, right? So.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that there might even be, I think the bar does not have to be super high for that either. Like we're kind of going around this topic of start with a small product first. And, you know, you could build, like let's take our insurance salesman's example. I know nothing about insurance sales. But if you could build a really simple interactive product that generated leads for insurance people. So like take this thing to assess your, you know, how much insurance you need and, you know, whatever, and then it gives the insurance people a list of those leads. That's not complicated software, but it has a lot of value to insurance salesmen.
And I wouldn't even start with line of code. What I would do is, a good example of this is actually, I had a conversation with a local here about a year ago who wanted to do this thing where it'll like automatically send your mom and relatives and stuff like gifts on their birthday, right? So you just give them your card and you say, okay, on Mother's Day, send my mom this bouquet of flowers, and then on her birthday, send this, and you know, so on. It's like a set it and forget it thing. And he was like, well, what framework should I use? And should I use Ruby or should I use Python? You know, all this stuff. And I'm like, what you want to do at first is you have a spreadsheet and you sell people. And when somebody says, hey, my mom's birthday is October 15th, and I want to send her this, you go into your calendar and you add an entry for October 15th. And you say, find the credit card for this guy and buy this and send it here, right? Like that's and you sell it to identify that early. I guess that's the whole lean model or whatever, right? But it's true because like until there's that cash flow that people are like, you know what, this is a big enough, like remembering this shit is a big enough pain that I will pay you like an overhead to do this on my behalf. But even go back a little further about like, do you even start with a software product? I would start with, you know, people say like, well, I want to write a book, right? And the best thing the best thing that I would recommend anyone who has that idea is, well, do like a webinar first, because webinars don't require nearly the prep time. They don't require the like shooting in the dark element that writing a book has. And on top of that, it's conversational. Yeah, it's a little less structured, it's smaller, whatever. But if you can say, hey, I'm an authority on this subject, and I'm gonna come and let's talk and go to a webinar for an hour, and I will present something. You do that, you have some sort of bidirectional feedback mechanism. You learn from that, and then you further flesh that out into something more transactional. So I did a workshop on recurring revenue that I've done twice now. And now I'm at the point where I'm taking the first one was kind of like the shot in the dark. I don't really know what people want to know, so I'm going to host this, and it's yes, I have content and curriculum, but it's more or less like an ask me anything element too.
Yeah.
The second one was much more refined because I had that initial feedback loop that I could then refine what I was teaching and make it a little more cohesive. And now that one was recorded, and now it's going to be, I've got an editor who's just making it nice, and it's going to be a downloadable product, right? So, I didn't say, I'm going to record this video course in my office. I started with that, and then that worked its way down into something more transactional. We all want the, wake up and there's money being sent to me feeling, but I think there needs to be, or there should be more of a transitionary path to that, right? Building a SaaS is my first thing, was the dumbest thing I ever did.
Yeah.
From a case. Just because I didn't know enough about what people wanted, and I didn't know enough in the context of, hey, this person paid me money to get this in return. Interviewing people is great and all, but unless there's cash flow happening, it's a little less. You need to take things with a little more grain of salt, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as accurate. So I think my favorite example of this is Nick Disvato, who has Draft Revise, which is a A/B testing thing. What's cool is it looks like a product, it looks like a SaaS that you're buying, but it's really just his time. And what he's able to do is over time he's able to automate a lot of it into software. And it eventually becomes a SaaS, but right now it's him doing it manually, but from the perspective of the customer, they're paying for a SaaS. But over time he can start, putting things into place that make it so it's not Nick's time, it's Nick's, the same outcomes being produced, but it's not depending on Nick's time.
Yeah.
I think it's the best way to do it.
And that was because you've said before, don't start with the SaaS product. Yeah. And I'm trying to remember your timeline, because one of our listeners here just asked, what if Double Your Freelancing Rate was your first kind of info product?
Yes.
It was your first info product?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And did you, when did you decide it was time to move up the chain and do kind of higher value products like your masterclass? So
that was really, Double Your Freelancing Rate came from PlanScope customers asking me about pricing. The masterclass came from general customers, PlanScope and Double Your Freelancing Rate, who were asking about, hey, I saw you bootstrap this agency to 11 people. How did you do that? So that came from that. Everything emerged from discussions, right? Everything emerged from people. If people keep asking you the same thing, and you know that the implications of what they're asking affect their business financially, that's a pretty good smell for a product opportunity. Mm-hmm. So I do a lot of this now. On my onboarding, when people join my newsletter, I ask them point blank, what core problem brought you here, right? And I have Gmail automatically labeling all of these, and I, from time to time, once a month, just go through and look at them all and try to extract key elements and normalize it and figure out okay, is there anything people are asking about that I don't address? And that's kind of my product creation formula these days. Before it was the same thing, it just wasn't my audience, it was other people's, so I would go onto forums and message boards and whatever else, and just be that fly on the wall and figure out what people are asking to each other. And now they're asking it to me, which is a little more direct because I can respond directly, and I get more volume, I guess. So that's kind of exactly what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Honestly. And so do you not do as much outside research now? Now most of it is just kind of responding to your...
Most of it. I have... literally probably upwards of 1,500 at least conversations labeled, a lot of different labels in Gmail that and then I take like the core chunks of that into, and I just have like Google Docs swipe files that are around different themes, and I normalize that and figure out common trends. And the best part is these are things that people are saying in their own words, so I can know what, like, that all gets recycled in the marketing, right? Like, so my new double your freelancing rate site that I launched yesterday, like almost every keyword combo and phrase and all that stuff came from somebody saying that in an email to me.
Yeah.
So it's better that way because it shows that you understand their needs, right? Like if you understand what they're going through, right?
Yeah. And so maybe just explain quickly, how do you do that? So if something comes into Gmail and you have a filter that's filtering out all the responses.
So my autoresponders have certain subjects, right? So I just create filters that look for reply to, RE colon subject of email, and those get automatically labeled in Gmail.
Gotcha. And so then you can go through those in another time. And then you said you have just something in Google Docs. You just manually copy those into Google Docs?
I copy, if somebody sends me like a 5-paragraph email, I'm not going to, it's not all valuable to me, probably.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to just extract, this is a cool way of phrasing this, and I'll just copy and paste that into a doc.
Gotcha. So you're tracking all that stuff. I want to take one step back, and we'll just quickly talk about maybe, because you said you learned something doing your first workshop to your second. So why don't you just take us through how you do a workshop now, how you'd recommend people do a workshop. How should they structure it? Because I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, what do I do? I just go on and teach, or?
So the stuff I did early, when I first did my masterclass, it was the typical, I had a slide deck, and I'd just share my screen and drone into my microphone for a few hours. The issue with that is it's a one-to-many thing, right? It's a broadcast. It's no different than somebody reading a book of mine. They're hearing the author, but there's no discussion element. So what I've been doing lately is Google Hangouts, or even GoToWebinar with everyone off of mute, and making it so my masterclass format now is I have there's a really lengthy outline that kind of steers the talking points that I cover. So my masterclass is 2 days, 5 hours a day, so it's 10 hours total. And what I do is the first day is all sales and marketing. I just work through that outline, but it's conversational. I'll say so Bob, tell me more about exactly how, what is your sales process now, and what do you think you're going to do differently as a result of what we just covered? So it's like we're all around a conference table talking, right? But I'm the one steering the discussion. I'm the moderator. And so it's less formal, I guess. But what I found is it's a lot more valuable for the attendee.
Mm-hmm.
With the added benefit that you don't need to prepare a bunch of keynote presentation slides.
Gotcha. So do you have any slides now, or you just have an outline and then everyone's kind of on screen?
And people, the results and the reception is exponentially higher. Because people would just get, you staring at a slide deck for 5 hours, you get exhausted. It's okay. You kind of, zone out.
Yeah.
So now it's a conversation that me and up to 14 other people have. And that's what I did. That's what I do for everything now. And it's just a way, it's recorded, so I can go in and reference it. And, over time, my masterclass so I switched last summer to being this kind of more informal setting for the masterclass. And each time it gets better because I'm realizing, I'm refining, I've got a follow-up survey too, which helps too, also. But during the class, I can kind of tell where I'm losing people, what do people keep getting stuck on, and so on, and it helps me refine that definitive outline for the next time I do it, right?
Yeah.
But eventually, I have so much data about how it's evolved over time that if I ever wanted to make me sitting here and getting some film crew to do a go to your own consultancy little video course, I would be much better off than if I had done that without the context of over a year of doing these live workshops.
Yeah.
Just because so much more about like the attendees and what drew them there, and what really are their needs? What do they need to know and need to have addressed?
Yeah. This is awesome. What would you recommend for someone starting out? Like, should they just do a 1-hour workshop on a Saturday? What's kind of the sweet spot for somebody starting out?
I'm focusing on freelancers who tend to more or less set their own schedule, so weekdays are okay, and I don't like weekends anyway. But for a lot of things, yeah, Saturday might be better. Some Sunday ones too, or nighttime ones. Like Ramit does a lot of, for his webinars, does a lot of like 9 p.m. Eastern time. So I would just, like I tell people all the time, like, you can't fail. Like, failure is just nobody showing up, and it's like, okay, I'll just republish a new date and, try it again.
Yeah. Has that ever happened to you?
No. But yeah. Because even with I could talk launch strategy for these things too. Mm-hmm. But with that first workshop, I basically sold it out in less than an hour because I had built up a pretty decent launch sequence all through the postscript area of my weekly newsletter. So I sold it with no website, like the first time. There was no site, nothing at all. It was all through like the PS line, my newsletter. Kind of crazy, but it worked. So. Yeah.
So, but for someone starting out, like, let's just give them a picture. Like, could it be? Because I don't know what. I've never done one of these, so I don't know where does the value start. I'm sure it depends on the audience.
You've done these live hangout things.
Yeah.
It's not much of a difference.
So would you do like, I'm just thinking like, think of yourself if you had 100 people on your list, 200 people, 300 people. Mm-hmm. What do you think should they shoot for? Having 5 people to start, and like an hour?
So I would start with free webinars. Like don't do a paid workshop yet. Just do like a just do like a 1 hour, 30-minute, or no, I'd say a 1 hour thing that correlates with the kind of stuff you write about each week or on your newsletter. Because the thing is, like, even a newsletter, it's a one-to-many format, right? Like you reach out to a lot of people, but yes, you can have the whole like reply and tell me something, whatever, but it's still a little awkward, I think, to reply versus a, hey, come hang out with me for an hour. If you have any questions relating to marketing for developers, let's just, I'm here. You can ask me anything. I'll address each of your questions. It's a really great way to build up that kind of like future customer loyalty, right? Like that's what you're doing. And then you can say, okay, so I'm glad you enjoyed that. We covered the why. We covered on a superficial level, like different questions. Now come out and we're going to, for 3 hours, for $100 or for $500 or whatever you want to charge, we're going to drill much deeper into this kind of stuff we talked about on that free thing we did. But we're going to drill much deeper. I've got a content that I want to share with you, a very structured framework, let's say. And you put that together, and it's just it's the exposition of what you would have done anyway in like a book format, let's say. Yeah. And you cover that exhaustively, and you just invite the people who attended before, and the people who attended before are the ones who gave you a lot of good feedback in those questions about what you should be asking, what you should cover, what you should teach on. So and if 2 people show up, that just means it's more valuable to them, right? Like. They get more value out of it because there's more direct exposure, and it's just learning and experimenting for you.
Yeah, this is great advice. I wish I'd done this for my first book, because it would have been so. Like I heard you mention this on another podcast where you said, I wouldn't have built a SaaS, and then everyone kind of automatically jumps to a book, but people don't realize like a SaaS and a book are actually a lot of work. And then you had mentioned, I would just do a webinar. I was thinking, oh yeah, like a webinar, that really reduces the barrier to entry, doesn't it?
It's more I think it's closer to consulting. It's more valuable to the attendee in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
The attendee gets more value because they have direct, it's like with a book, again, what's the protocol if you have a follow-up question? What do you do, right?
Yeah.
Reply to email the author. It's kind of weird, right? But people do that, obviously. But it's not as comfortable, I think, as having like a discussion forum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. This is awesome. Just a quick question. Corey asks, with the SaaS app, you often look for people losing money on a problem. Is there kind of an equivalent answer for something like a webinar? Is it the same thing? You looking for people that are looking to save money, or?
It's just a difference in medium, right? Like the big eye opener, the thing that let me write a book, because I was a typical engineer. I was like, ebooks are scammy. I'm not doing that. I started to realize like no one cared that PlanScope was Mac, right? Like no one cared that my book is a PDF file or Kindle, whatever. What matters is the results, the change, that delta they get after using your product or consuming your product. So that's what allowed me to do it was, people sign up for something like PlanScope because they want to be more accountable to their clients. They want to be more transparent. They want to really impress their clients when it comes to managing their project. But people buy W Freelancing Rate not because they want a book. They buy it because they want to raise their prices, or they buy my other book, The Blueprint, because they want to generate more leads. So it's all like there's always that end. And I think as like technical people, as engineers and stuff, we get so caught up on the medium because it took us so long to get good at Ruby or so long to get good at coding or whatever else that we're so fixated on that. No, but even if you're selling to developers, they don't give a shit. Like I don't care what code climate's made in. I just want my my app to be better. I want to see that awesome report that says I'm doing something good. It's just we get so fixated on the medium. So yeah, I think it's all about benefits. It could be a webinar. It could be a one-on-one consulting Skype call. It could be a book. It could be a video course. It could be software. It could be it doesn't matter, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Hey, Brennan, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Justin.
Cool, man.
You guys.
All right, that's the show for this week. Big thanks to Brennan Dunn. You should check out Brennan online. BrennanDunn.com, at Brennan Dunn on Twitter, planscope.io, doubleyourfreelancingrate.com. That's where you need to go. Go check him out. He has helped a lot of people, and if you're into consulting or you call yourself a freelancer right now, he's the guy you need to talk to. All right? You can follow the show, Product People, at Product People TV on Twitter. Again, go and check out what we're doing at productpeople.club. You might be interested. Go see what it's about. We're going to be sharing live video from these interviews. So the full interview, I only shared about half with you today, but you get the full interview where Brennan Dunn actually goes through his funnel and shows you how everything works. That's going to be at productpeople.club. What else? I'm Justin. You can follow me on Twitter at MIJustin. Striker Metal, striker-metal.com. Thanks for the music, guys. And, man, it feels like I'm forgetting something. I can't think of it. Just go out and do it. See you next week.
Fight for your life. Fight for your freedom. Or you'll never live again. Fight for your life. Fight for your freedom. Or you'll never see tomorrow.
Podcast hosting is provided by Transistor.fm. They host our MP3 files, generate our RSS feed, provide us with analytics, and help us distribute the show to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. If you want to start your own podcast or you want to switch to Transistor, go to transistor.fm/Justin and get 15% off your first year.